for Community Systems Development, which is a Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge initiative and a joint project of the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Education and Illinois Action for Children. Through the consortium, we are working to bring together ideas, resources, and connections for early childhood collaborations across the state in a lot of different ways, including through these webinars. And today's webinar is on a topic that I know is of great interest to a lot of you in attendance on parent engagement for building strong community systems. Before we get started, let's go through a few of the basics for the webinars. Because of the large number of participants that we have on the webinar today, we have you muted because that background noise makes it harder to hear. But if you have a question, everybody has a hand-raising button, and I will tell you that your control panel might look different than mine. I work off of a Mac, and sometimes the PC buttons look a little bit different. But you have a button to raise your hand, or you can type a question into the chat box and send it to the organizers, and we will either take care of your technical issue or add it to questions for panelists. We are recording today's webinar, and we will post it to our website soon after the webinar. So one of the challenges that we have in a webinar is that we can't see who's out in the audience. So we like to do a few introductory polls to get a sense of who is out there and where you're from and what you do. So Maya, I'm going to ask you if you could launch the first poll, and we'll find out where folks are from. And we'll give this just a second. We get a running tally of how many people have voted. It's very exciting. When we get to about 85% of you having voted, we'll stop. And there we are. All right, we're going to close the poll. Maya, can you show us the results? Okay, so we've got people from different parts of the state. Looks like most of us are north of I-80 today. And then let's do a second poll on, Maya, if you could launch that second poll. We're interested to know what sector of the early childhood system you're part of. All right, we'll close that poll. Okay, and it looks like we have a lot of folks from early care and education, and I'm dying to know who the others are. So anyway, thank you so much. We have a great panel lined up for today of collaboration leaders from different parts of the state who are all working on very different locally specific strategies to bring that authentic parent voice into their collaboration work and to develop parent leaders in their community. So I'm going to turn it over now. Oh wait, I'm just going to tell you who they are. So we have today Chua Vu, who is our Director of Community Engagement at Illinois Action for Children, is going to be moderating the panel today. And then first up will be Melissa Rumpf, who is the All Our Kids Network Coordinator in St. Clair County. She works out of Children's Home and Aid in the Metro East area. Trish Mooney, who is the Director of the newly formed Spark Aurora Early Childhood Collaboration in Aurora. And finally, Andrea Densham, who is with the Childcare Network of Evanston, and she is speaking today on behalf of Evanston's Little and Learning Evanston Early Childhood Collaborative. So with that, now I'm going to turn it over to Chua to introduce today's topic and our panelists.
Thank you, Kathy. So I'm really just going to set up the context for this webinar and let the speakers speak. And so, as we know in parent engagement, research really shows us that parents have the greatest impact on their children's social, emotional, cognitive abilities. And we also know through our own experience, right, that programs and organizations when they engage parents in meaningful and authentic ways, can really help improve not only our programs, but also deepen our community engagement efforts. And so generally parent engagement exists in many different ways, but they tend to fall in two general categories. One type of relationship is one-way relationships, and in one-way relationships we often view parents as a client or a customer, and they are on the receiving end of the relationship, and schools or programs give them a service or they give them information that helps them. But there's another kind of relationship which is two-way relationships. In two-way relationships, parents are viewed as partners. They're important contributors to our programs, to our organizations, and two-way relationships can lead to more authentic parent engagement because they are mutual and they're beneficial to both parties in the relationship. So when programs and parents work together to really make decisions that impact their children and their families and their communities, parents can have a true role and voice in the decisions that matter to them. In policy and advocacy, which is where I work, we know that parents can be powerful advocates for children and families. And so today we're going to hear from panelists about how they build meaningful and authentic relationships with parents, and they will share with us how they build parent voice and how they enhance parent leadership in their work. First person speaking for us will be Melissa Rumpf, who is the All Our Kids Network Coordinator in St. Clair County, which is also part of Children's Home and Aid. And when she's ready, she can speak.
Thank you, Chua. So I just first of all want to say thank you to Illinois Action for Children for inviting this conversation. And I'm very glad and humbled to be a part of it. So I will start my part of the webinar. So hopefully everyone is able to see my screen. So it just says Parent Engagement, Connect, Engage, and Sustain. And so what I really want to talk about during my portion is to just basically explain what we did here in the East St. Louis community. This conversation started over 2 years ago. In our community, we were lucky to have Strengthening Families in the very beginning of this conversation. And after Strengthening Families was no longer with us, we had this existing parent group in place that we had trained as hosts to do cafes. And we were really trying to figure out as a network, you know, how could we continue this work? How could we continue conversations? And what could we do with this parent group that was already in place but really didn't have a focus in terms of, you know, what work they could do outside of just the cafes in the community. And so we wanted to take it further. So during our monthly meetings, many of the network partners said, you know, we have parents who want to be a part of this conversation. We're in the process of doing a new strategic plan for the All Our Kids Early Childhood Network. How can we involve parents in that process? And so we talked about it, and we met about it, and we tried to come up with very creative ideas, and it seemed like nothing stuck. So during the process of all these conversations, we decided to go to our conceptual framework. And if you'll notice in our conceptual framework, right there where it says the network capacity piece, we have different sectors. So we have health, we have early childhood, we have mental health, but we were missing parents at the table. And so even though we had an existing group, parents still weren't feeling comfortable enough to come to the network meetings. And so we were trying to figure out, you know, how can we get parents to our network meetings? So we came up with the idea of creating this idea of empowering parents and giving them their voice. And so what we did was we went back and we looked at the 12 key principles for creating a healthy community. And if you'll notice there on the left-hand side, it talks about people support what they create, people act most responsibly when they care, and conversation is the way humans have always thought together. So we went back to these principles. And so here's what we came up with. So we came up with 3 ideas, you know, connect, engage, and sustain. So one of the things I did as a coordinator, I went to different sectors in the East St. Louis community, and I just started a conversation, and that was just how this all started out. How do we start parent engagement in our community? Well, we started out with just a basic conversation. What does that look like for our community? What would that do for our community? Now, many of the agencies and the child care centers, they didn't realize it, but I was trying to make sure that we were very strategic in our partnerships. And so I was seeking out existing parent groups and just saying, okay, you have this parent group here. What can I do to add to that? How can I help you to better what you're already doing? And so one of the things that came out of that conversation was, although there were some existing parent groups, many of the parent groups didn't have places to volunteer, they didn't have projects to work on, nor did they have training in place. And so with that in mind, we went back to the table as a network and we said, okay, here's how we can add to, here's how we can build, here's how we can connect and push even further the parent engagement that we want to see happen in our community. And then the next thing we did was we looked at just different geographic locations within the community. And we really wanted to see which areas in East St. Louis were in the most need of that parent engagement piece. Which parents in the community were the ones that were really interested in having active volunteers in their neighborhood, seeing projects fulfilled in their neighborhood. And so that's one of the things that we did in terms of connecting. And then the next thing we did was we wanted to figure out, how do I engage, the parents that are already in the community that want to be a part of this. So the next thing we did was, once we figured out which parents wanted to be a part of this new look at how we're going to do parent engagement in East St. Louis, we actually sat down as a network and had conversations with parents one-on-one. And sat down and we did the appreciative inquiry interviews, and we talked about, what would this community look like if we had, parents who were at the table, who were being decision makers, who were really in control of what resources were coming in and out of their community. So really giving parents that ownership and engaging them in those conversations. And then having parents to know that, with you being engaged, we can collaborate better in our community. And so with that in mind, the next thing we wanted to do was to engage parents. Was we went out and we did a door-to-door survey in certain areas in the community, getting more input. And then finally, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did in order to sustain the work that we're already working on is we created, similar to what Kofi has done by doing the parent peer leaders and mentors. So we have already had 4 parents who are trained in the Kofi model. So they are trainers. They will actually be starting training other parents in our community in January. We provided stipends, incentives. We're working on figuring out a way to strengthen parent leadership and their advocacy skills. Some of the other things we do is we are now in the process of making sure that we have activities that occur on Saturdays so that we can keep our parents coming. And then as you can see, some of the other things we did was we provided food, refreshments, transportation, and child care, all those things that, they say that good parent engagement, the supports that good parent engagement needs. So that is what we did, and I'm going to turn it back over to Chua at this time.
Thank you, Melissa. That was a great presentation. Before we turn it over to Trish, we're going to launch another poll and get some feedback from everyone that's on the webinar. So the question is, when you hear about a door-to-door campaign to engage parents, what goes through your mind? Is it too hard, scary? You think it's great? You're ready to go knock on some doors right after this? Or you'll like to learn more about how to do it in your own community? And when you're ready, Maya, you can wrap up and show us the results. So it looks like most of us find that it would be great to do if we only had time and resources. And a lot of people are also interested in learning more how to do this. This is great. So Melissa Rump is definitely a resource for those who are interested in doing this more. Our second panelist is Trish Mooney, who's the Director of Spark Aurora Early Childhood Collaboration. And she'll be sharing with us some of the work that she's doing out there in Aurora.
Great. Thanks, Chua. And just thank you for the opportunity to share some of our work here at Spark and what we've done in our efforts to create a parent council for our collaboration. So our collaboration has been in existence just close to 2 years. And in building our collaboration, we really want to keep in mind that we have good feedback from our parents. So from the get-go, we really want to invest time and energy into creating a parent council for our collaboration. And we went through much of the steps that Melissa described earlier in her presentation. But for us as a council, we want to make sure that what I'm showing you here is what the parent council, why it was incorporated into Spark, so that we can ensure an authentic parent voice and guidance from parents. But more important is we want to put that language into our charter so that we showed that commitment that a parent council will always be part of our overall structure. And our parent council was brought about, we represent about 6 school districts, and we have 4 predominant school districts. So our parent council is comprised of members from the different parts of Aurora, but really we engaged parent groups, our principals, our directors who are very much acquainted with the parents in their programs, and asked them first to participate much and go through what Melissa described, the Kofi model. So they participate in a parent leadership training, and we felt this was important for us because we really want to empower our parents who are going to be actively involved in Spark. We want them to have the leadership skills to be confident to participate in our executive committee, and to also have that training to do door-to-door knocking, engage in our surveys, also to be able to lead parent groups, and be out in the community as ambassadors for Spark. So having that opportunity through our technical assistance grant from Illinois Action for Children, we really invested those dollars into providing that parent leadership training. Let me show you here. Oops. Sorry about that. So the structure for Spark, I thought it might be useful for all of you to see our organizational chart. So we have about 8 parent council members, and we were very cognizant that we wanted at least 20% membership for parents as part of our exec committee. And that's just feedback that we received from a training we attended through through the conference that was sponsored by Partner Plan Act from the Michigan organization. And they came out and they gave us direction as to what the best path to take with that. So we have about 8 members. We're still hoping to bring in about 2 more members into the group. And like I mentioned earlier, they're members of the school districts, but they're also members of our partner agencies, such as Family Focus, our VNA through home visiting programs, church groups, and so that's what combines our parent council. From that parent council this year, they've chosen a parent liaison who then participates at at the level of the executive committee. And she attends these meetings and shares what happens at the various meetings they have, the various activities. So she basically reports out to the group and provides the feedback that the council members would want for her to share to the executive committee. We also wanted to invest in their voice being active in all our subcommittees. So each council member, we have about 2 members for each of our exec committee, play an active role in each of our subcommittees. So as you can see from our structure, we have a family outreach committee, a program improvement, which focuses on professional development and quality improvements in our child care programs and family child care homes. And then we have this program coordination, which is which they participate in and trying to really build a strong pipeline between school district and community-based programs and agencies. We haven't started our fourth one, which is looking at supply and demand, but they will also be participating in those groups as well. And thus far, we just started our parent council group, and the feedback from the participants who attended the COFI training have been overwhelming. I think going through that parent leadership training really has helped them to actively participate. They're more engaged. The work that they do for us, or what they contributed so far to our collaboration, has both been meaningful to the collaboration, but to themselves as well. They really see themselves as a very integral component of Spark, and much of the success of Spark, as we've shared with them, and now they really do see themselves that our ability to meet our goals and objectives really does rely on their continuous feedback to the collaboration, but also on their ability to network and engage other parents. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish, for that presentation. Before we start with our last presenter, Maya, there's another poll that we would like to launch for our viewers. Maya? It looks like
it's up there, too.
What's that?
It's up.
It's up? Okay. So it looks like the parents who aren't supported to be active participants and leaders were in a higher percentage. So next up we have Andrea Disham, who is the Executive Director of the Childcare Network of Evanston, who will be speaking about the work that they did.
Thanks so very much. I hope everyone's doing well today on this cool winter's day. I also just want to thank Illinois Action for Children and Kathy and Chua for the opportunity to participate in this call. As the speakers came before me, you can tell this is a group of really extraordinary, hardworking, and forward-thinking leaders. And I know many other leaders are on the call, so I hope that I'll try to move through my piece quickly so that we can hear from many others. I have the opportunity as the Childcare Network of Evanston to work with and provide support and facilitate Little in Learning, which is Evanston's early learning collaborative. We, like many of the other early learning collaboratives that spoke before me, are a group of individuals and representatives of childcare and early learning agencies and educational institutions, social service agencies, parents, and concerned community residents, and many other partners. Our focus has been, just to provide you a little bit of background, our focus has been really on how do we ensure high-quality, affordable, universal preschool experiences for 3 to 4-year-olds so that all Evanston children are ready for kindergarten and ready for later success. That's been the mission and the focus for Little in Learning from the start. Once we did that and we had a fantastically clear goal, it's also wonderfully lofty. And while we all endorse it, the next and the harder question is what to do from there. And how do we move forward and how do we achieve the goal? And perhaps even more importantly is what are the barriers and challenges making it hard to reach this goal? Many of us have the similar goals, if maybe broader or other. Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to show my slides, and it doesn't look like they're showing right now. So let me try that one more time and see if I can put on the slideshow and if it shows up or not. So I will forward the slides to everyone, and I'm sorry if the slides aren't showing up on everyone else's screen. But I'll keep moving through the.
Andrea, it's Kathy. I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you hit? You might have something should have popped up on your screen that said "Show my screen."
Ah, thank you so much. I'm so sorry.
That's it. No, no problem.
There
we go. Now we see you. Thank you.
Now you can see me and you can see my slides. There we go. Sorry, all. Thanks so much. So the question was, what's next? We have a clear goal. How best do we move forward? And really the focus was on identifying the barriers and challenges. And specifically, what are the barriers and hurdles that make it challenging for folks to receive preschool experiences and for all of the children in Evans to be prepared for kindergarten? And we wanted to ask those who live those challenges and experience the hurdles themselves. So that's how we got to the next place. Oops. We wanted to ask parents. And Little and Learning recognized that parents of young children are often not included in these conversations. You heard eloquently from the presentations before me about why it's important for parents to be part of leadership. It's also really important to have rich conversations, I think, with parents to ensure that we understand that our systems and policies are developed in a way that can best impact their lives. So in order to move forward in that way, we wanted to make sure we heard the voices of parents, and we conducted focus groups in early 2013 to ask them about their experiences finding care and education for their young children. So I also have a lot of additional information around what we found and what we're doing moving forward, but I'm just going to give you a quick pass through it, and anyone who has any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me and some of the other folks in our collaborative. So we cast a really wide net with our recruitment. We wanted to make sure that the focus groups that we conducted looked at the diversity of Evanston, and as well, and with a special focus on those receiving and using subsidized early learning programs. So you'll see from the demographics that 45% of the participants were African American, 24 Latino, 12 white, and 12 Asian. We had a focus group focused for Spanish speakers. You also can see the quite diversity around home language, with 55% English speakers and 24% Spanish-only speakers, while another additional 15% English and Spanish. You can see the pretty substantial language diversity there, too. Half of the parents were receiving the Illinois Childcare Assistance Program assistance, and also you can see many of the families that were included were living well below 200% of poverty. We had 33 parents, 30 moms, and 3 dads. Of those families, they included 78 children. More than half of the parents were between 26 and 35, with 12% younger than 26 and 36 older than that. Half were single parents. The majority of children were enrolled in some kind of early learning or educational program. So we were actually hitting people that were involved in early learning services and still experiencing substantial barriers. The focus groups themselves lasted 90 minutes, and they covered 4 major areas that you can see there. And each group had a facilitator and 2 volunteer note takers. The really important piece is, what did we learn? And the 3 takeaways from really rich and dense process. And by the way, in addition to the focus groups themselves, we also had a survey that was completed by the parents, so it gave us really strong demographic information and a lot of details about what their lives were like and some of the barriers they were achieving. So even if, and that's, I think, a really important piece to this, it's just a nice tool in a toolbox. If someone isn't a very active speaker, then you'll be able to ensure that you're getting some of their feedback through the survey itself. So we learned that the parents have high standards for early learning and education. Each and every one of them actually were really articulate about the standards that they had for their children. The parents' choices for their children in early care and education are influenced a lot, as we all know, by cost, work schedules, and limitations for child care subsidies. And parents think that Evanston has an abundance of services. However, number 2, the second bullet, is their everyday challenge. So that's the biggest barrier that we were able to identify. Just making a little bit more per hour, as many of you on the call know, small changes in education or work changes in schedule really impacts eligibility and drastically either limits or eliminates early learning options for many of the parents. The parents were incredibly articulate about that. Why was this such an important piece for all of us? It really provided us a rich group of information. It said what was currently working in our system, which actually was really important for us to know. Sometimes we often focus only on the barriers and the challenges and not on what works. We learned a lot about what people like and what works very well for them. We also, though, focused a lot on what needs to be fixed and how. This kind of rich, thoughtful dialogue really allowed us to delve really deeply into specific barriers, having very concrete examples of what those are and how they directly impact people's lives. Not only did it give us a rich group of information to talk with others about why early learning is important, but it helps us with very clear ideas about how to change it. And it helped us prioritize challenges. Which barriers and hurdles were most significant? If we moved those, which could have biggest bang for buck? That is, how could we improve access to early learning services for the largest number of people? And it was incredibly thoughtful and specific suggestions emerged through that process, ones that were really important for us to move forward with. And the other piece that I just wanted to really focus on in my short time here is that parents matter. And I know that my speakers before me have talked about this. But I think we need to be really clear that we need multiple venues for participation. In addition to parent councils and community meetings, focus groups like this and other opportunities for open dialogue are really important. I'll say, as someone who believes and has worked with parent and community councils for a long time, those councils can be very structural, and we can be focused on an agenda that we crank through. Having the opportunity to listen for 90 minutes, and not for us to be talking, but us to listen, really allowed us to learn some things that I think without that opportunity to, in a structured way, to hear and listen and provide and receive feedback, it's critically important. So I just want to really focus on the multiple venues piece, because I think that's critically important. Regular feedback and update. Not only do we need to listen often and well, we need to provide feedback to the community and the parents on a regular basis so that they know how their decision-making and their input is actually having may change our systems of care, be responsive and collaborative in our decision-making, which I think the first two presenters were really clear about, as well as opportunities for leadership and empowerment. So for us here in Evanston, here are the next two steps that we're engaged in. When we looked at the goals, we said that issue of the fiscal cliff for our parents, when they hit the point where they no longer can receive subsidy, is so significant and so substantial that we need to address that. So Little and Learning is beginning the process of developing an Evanston-wide scholarship endowment to really focus on those issues. We're at the very, very beginning of that process, but it's one that the group is fully committed to. And the second is working to develop our collaborative. In many ways, you've also heard from our earlier speakers about how important it is to have strong and clear structure. We're in the midst of working on developing that responsive and collaborative decision-making structure. We're in Evanston in the process of having even larger collective impact model being instituted, and early learning is a core part of it, and Little and Learning will be the early learning part of that. And we're focused on learning from our partners across the state on how best to engage parent leadership and provide ever-increasing empowerment opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. That presentation was definitely very helpful and insightful in terms of the work that you're doing out in Evanston. And I feel like there's been a common theme that's emerged in all three presentations in terms of what you emphasize in terms of multiple venues of engaging parents, and all three presentations talked about the different ways they engaged parents, whether it's one-on-one, in surveys, in focus groups, and so in trainings and workshops, which is great. Before we kind of go to the Q&A, and we're starting to get some questions as they come, we're going to do another poll of all the people that are here. And the question is, which method of gathering information from parents do you think is the most effective in your community? And please select one, from focus groups to one-on-one interviews. And then we can, as votes are coming in, we can do a final tally of what people think. So it looks like focus groups is 35, and then one-on-one interviews are what people think are the most effective strategies. We're going to do the Q&A section, and there are a few questions that have come in for our panelists. One question is for Andrea. The question is, can you expand upon the recruitment tactics utilized in order to ensure such diversity within the family groups that participated in your focus groups?
We really worked hard to work. We have a great and diverse community representatives on our local collaborative, and we dug in really deep to work with the current established parent advisory groups and councils that we have, reaching out at many of the different venues that people are receiving early learning services, and a diversity of those places, so not simply center-based, but also using our home visiting staff to engage and reach out, using many of the community organizations that we partner with that are social service agencies, reaching out to them and ensuring that they knew what was going on, and ensuring that the materials were available in multiple languages as well, to make sure that we are able to reach out especially to the Spanish-speaking population. It was really important to us. It's an area of growth in our community, and we wanted to make sure we could address those. But I have to say that all that works because of genuine and long-standing relationships with all of those people, who then could go back to their organizations and go back to the parents that they engage with in a trusted way and say, here, we would love for you to participate this, and this is important. And clearly incentives are important too, and whoever wants, I can give you more information about that. But I think more important than incentives is the fact that the people that were asking them to participate, they knew and they trusted.
Actually, there is a follow-up question regarding, what incentives you used to both recruit, and then also how did you retain participation?
And I want to get the dollar amounts right so I can get back to anybody on the specific amounts. But we had babysitting, we had child care services provided during the event, during the focus groups. We had a small fiscal incentive, and there was food. All of those things, I'm sure all of you do on a regular basis. I think the biggest incentive was that this was something that was happening with people that they knew and they trusted, and they thought would have an impact, and because of past experience, would have an impact on changing service delivery. So I think it goes a long way. Trust in the community goes a long way to make these things work and successful. And retaining folks in the collaborative is also about staying focused. I have to say that that there is so much excitement about using the focus groups as a driver and the outcomes of those to focus on one clear goal for the next year. Having something that's really clear and obtainable seems to really energize folks, and I think that's also been really helpful.
Okay, thank you. There's a question, and I'm going to direct it to Trish, and the question is, so, you have the council and you have these executive team structures. How do you get the executive teams to accept a parent at the table and treat them with some level of respect and provide a welcoming environment?
Well, that was definitely a conversation that we engaged in at our exec committee, and that commitment to that overall commitment that if we were truly wanting to hear feedback from a parent, but more importantly, to have a parent be part of the strategic direction of SPARK, then everybody at the table had to come into that meeting on equal footing. And that's why we invested so much into the parent leadership model, because we wanted that parent to be comfortable, to be empowered, but also, and when we spoke to the parents in the parent council, we also, in turn, shared the structure of the meeting and the purpose of why we were doing a parent leadership training, so that they would to have the skills to participate at the level of the executive committee and to be confident coming in there. We didn't want them timid. And the exec committee members also recognize that we have superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals, directors, individuals who have some pretty high seats in the organization sitting there. So they were cognizant. I think there's that reflection of what your title brings to a meeting. And so we really took the time to talk about how we would welcome a parent into a group and how important it was that we relay the message to them that the important role they're playing into strengthening and building the collaboration.
Okay. Another question that came in, which could be the whole panel could speak to, but maybe I'll ask Melissa to respond first. The question is, do you find that childcare is a barrier, and do you offer childcare services during your family events?
So for us, childcare, because I live in, the community of East St. Louis, because it is a community that is relational, very much so, we typically meet on a Saturday, and we meet at a childcare facility. And it's not so much a barrier in our community because in most of the parents that I'm working with, they have older children who actually do keep young ones at home. But there are times when we do need child care services, so we actually work with child care directors in the community who are willing to open up their center and allow us to use their facility and actually do offer staff to us to keep children when we are doing different activities, such as doing door-to-door surveys.
Okay. Does Andrea or maybe Trish want to answer that question?
Yeah, this is Trish. The activities that we do with parents, whether it's through parent cafes or even at the parent leadership training, childcare is always provided. It's just something that we have come to recognize from the parents that is a need for them to have, and we've just made accommodations to ensure that we have childcare available.
Okay.
This is Andrew. That's right. Childcare and food for the adults and the
Yes,
children.
and food.
So another question for all of you, so the question is, how does parent engagement differ if there are teen parents involved, and do you change your approach? Takers on that one, Andrea or Melissa or Trish?
I think it's really important. I think that's a great question, and I think that's something that we're still working on in terms of finding the perfect answer for it. And youth engagement in our community is something that we not only our organization, but many other sister organizations are working on. And I think really recognizing the difference, the generational differences between and among our parents is critically important in terms of engagement and the skills and the experience that folks bring to the table. And one thing that we've been having some discussions about is mentoring between and among parents, especially since we have some youth parents, some teen parents that are engaged in some of our parent work, as well as some grandparents who are engaged, which, that age span then becomes quite expansive. And I think it's important to really recognize how the different life experiences that folks come to the table with and try to provide some support. And I'd love to know if there are other folks who are using mentorship as a means, because it's something we've been talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Trish, do you have anything to add, or Melissa?
Yeah, we're thinking about the use of parent mentors as well, but I think what we're learning along the way is that the greatest influence on parent participation are the parents themselves. So having that strong network of parents who can encourage other parents to attend has really played such a great role in the work that we're doing out here in Aurora. And the model, I think, I'm a trainer, so you have to really think about parent engagement, parent training from such a different point of view. As a trainer, you teach, but really, we really emphasize of what can we learn from each other. And the Parent Cafe model has been a great tool for us to help parents come together, but really that model of learning from each other, but at the same time we're also providing some enriching materials and resources, but really having those parents have an opportunity to learn from one another has been a great source for us.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, do you want to add anything before I ask the next question?
No, that's okay. You can
Okay.
ask the next question.
The next question is to all of you. What supports and professional development preparation do you think programs and providers need in order to engage families?
Sure, can you repeat it again? I was writing it down.
Sure. So the question is, what supports and professional development preparation do you think programs and providers, like you guys, need to do in order to engage families?
For us in Aurora, it's really about cultural understanding and diversity. As we work with various entities, for example, when I started here at the school district, you have your model of parent engagement, and I came to the table asking, but that's a typical model, kind of a cookie-cutter model, but when you're really looking at a community, understanding the culture of what brings people together. And so support for diversity, training in diversity and understanding cultures and family context within the community you live in, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Andrea or Melissa, you guys want to answer that question at all?
This is Andrea. I think it's a great question. I think it really gets to the point that sometimes we jump into this the community engagement work without a common understanding of what our basic principles are, and I think some common work around that is actually something that's important. We haven't actually done a lot of that here, and I think that's something that it's on my to-do list, and I wrote it down as something that maybe we could have some training on across the community so that we had at least some more common standards about how to do it. But I think we assume everyone knows how to engage community members, and I don't know that that's always the case.
Okay.
Yes.
Melissa, did you want to add?
Sure, I can add to it. I'm sorry, you were kind of breaking in and out on me. One of the things, too, to add to what Trish was saying, something that we've been doing just as an AOK network is really understanding not only about the culture differences, but then actually some of the languages that are being used within the community. How are the resources really understood, and how are they being utilized, and what is that transaction between programs or agencies and parents. So it really goes back to that relationship piece and how can we strengthen that. So yeah, just to add to the culture piece, so I do think that is very important, and it was a great question. So that's one of the things that I've also written down as well as something we can do better in terms of offering training in our community.
Okay. I think that we have someone who's interested in asking a question. Maya, if you can help navigate this in terms of Tracy has a question. And can you actually call on Tracy?
Tracy, Tracy's on. Tracy, you're unmuted. You're unmuted now.
You're talking about Tracy Akami?
Kathy?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's where I had a question.
I don't know that I had a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, somebody using your...
Well, okay, so maybe that's Lannon. I think, well...
There's two, you know what, Tracy, there's two of you on here and one I can't hear. Tracy
okay.
had...
Well, maybe can I just say something really quickly? So Lannon Broughton, who is a parent who is active with Kofi and Power Pack, is also on the line with me. I think maybe what he was going to say is that we're just excited that there is all of this conversation around parent engagement, which is something we've been working on for a while. And with both Spark and the AOK network in East St. Louis, you know, they mention our name a couple of times. If people are interested in contacting us at all, they can just do so at Kofi at kofionline.org. But I think more than anything, it's just the excitement about what is happening across the state, and just the examples on the call of how parent engagement is really working and how people are thinking about it in a much deeper way, I think, than you know, a lot of organizations and institutions have previously thought about it.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for that. And definitely they're a resource in terms of professional development options, I assume. And so there's one more question, which I'm going to direct to the group as well in terms of, so what advice would you give to communities that do not have an established network to support their work with families? And so what do you think, in your opinion, comes first? Working with interested providers, trying to work with or influence parents who are either really involved or not involved? What advice would you give them? Maybe I'll start with Andrea.
Great. And I think from Jump Street, it's fantastic if you don't have any infrastructure in existence, to really use parents as the backbone and the core of the group, so that their voice and their leadership can be at the center. It's also clearly important to have those who are providing the services and those who are funding the services and those who are invested in it at the table. So as much of and as many representatives as you can from and leadership of, you know, your school districts, your town or city or neighborhood, you know, business owners, as well as community leaders. And if you have local funders, having them at the table is also critically important. The more people you can bring around the table as you begin the idea of focusing on early learning services in your community, the better. But having parents at the core will make it much more successful. Their authentic and clear voice will continue to be at the core if it starts that way. And so I would just strongly encourage that as you bring people together, that you're really thoughtful about that structure and don't simply begin with going with the leadership of the local organizations, but also making sure that the parents are engaged.
Okay. Melissa or Trish, you guys want to answer that in terms of what advice you would give for folks who don't have ready networks?
Well, I think Andrea said it beautifully. I echo that same sentiment, and I think it's just parents need to know you're invested and you truly want them to be a part of the process, and not just, you know, that one-time input. So I think really making that commitment is important. It's important for your community to know, I mean, you're doing this for families and children, so you have to commit to having that parent voice from the get-go. I will also say, if you are building a structure, it's really, you want to be intentional about your budget as well. And we've really invested some money into ensuring that our parent council continues to have continuing support, whether that be through training, for their meetings, for the things they want to do and participate in. We want them to know that they have those opportunities, because we only know that that's going to have a positive domino effect back to the work that we're doing.
Okay. Melissa, did you want to weigh in at all?
Yes, I do. I do. I think Andrea and Trish said it beautifully as well, but I'm going to add to it. One of the things that I did, because there were some things in place, but not a whole lot in place. So, I went to programs. I said, what does your existing group look like? Would like to meet with them. Can you select one of your parents, that parent who's a squeaky wheel, and let's sit down and I want to talk to them. And so I did. I sat down and I talked with parents first. And my question to the parents I sat down and talked with was, you know, what are your dreams? What are your aspirations? What do you want for your children? What do you want for your community? What do you want for yourself? And so I think sometimes we don't ask that question to parents, what do you want for yourself? Because we're so busy thinking about what our program goals are, what we need to accomplish for the grants. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned with that, because we should be. But one of the things that I really wanted the parent group to know that I'm working with, you know, this is not just me working here to do my job, but this is me really being concerned about the community that we are all living in and the community that we're trying to move forward, not just for us, but for our children as well. So really pulling them in that way, and just with that question being asked to parents, parents are saying, yeah, I want to have this commitment to this group, because this group is really cares about me as well as my children. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Melissa. So final question, and then you guys can kind of answer in a speedy way as we start to wrap up this webinar. This question speaks to, I think, Lannon's point from Kofi, who was talking about, you know, the importance of having both grandparents and different kinds of parents involved in the parent engagement process as a way to recruit more men into the work. Of course, so speaking more about grandfathers. And so the question is, what are the landmines that you what are landmines in trying to advance this work with the widest inclusion possible? And what is like one warning you would give to the group as they consider doing this work? And speedy round, so we'll start with maybe Trish.
Oh, okay. Landmines, I'm just thinking. You know, we're such in a learning curve right now, being a year or so into the work we're doing, that we haven't ran into a landmine, so I guess, you know, I'm probably not the best person to answer this at the moment. We are very cognizant that we have really trying to make an effort to have anybody who is a guardian or cares, you know, member of the family be a part of our dialogues and our conversations, such as our parent cafes and when we have our focus groups for kindergarten readiness. So we do really have an emphasis, or when we have callers or somebody inquire, that's open to everybody who has a vested interest in a young child. But no landmines yet, sorry.
Thank you. Maybe I'll go to Melissa and then end with Andrea.
Sure. Some of the landmines that I've just come to discover is one of the things that I say to, you know, network partners, and even when I'm in meetings, because I'm now taking parents to meetings with me. So one of the things that I say in the beginning of the meeting when we're speaking, I say to them, can we suspend assumptions, number one, and let's not assume that everyone at the table is aware of what you're talking about. So if you're going to talk about a program, give a little bit of definition behind that program so my parents understand what you're talking about. The other thing I ask people to do is to avoid using professional jargon with families, because sometimes we forget that you may have a parent, they're on fire, they want to be involved, they're engaged, but their reading level may not be where yours is at. So I always ask people, you know, hey, I need you to come down. You know, don't think more of yourself than you ought to. We're all working together to make a better community. So those are some of the landmines that I like to walk in the door with when I have my parents with me. Okay. That I like to make sure that we avoid so that we can advance the work.
What about you, Andrea?
That's great. I think those are all really important, what Melissa just walked through. So, and from not only this experience but past community engagement experience, I think it's also really important to have a common code of conduct for everyone to understand the issues of privacy and confidentiality. I think sometimes we assume everyone has a good understanding of that, but it's better from Jump Street to get on the same page about that. And if there are conflicts, to really think through, especially for those of you who are just starting out, to really think through if there might be a conflict between a parent and a service provider, what process and how do you want to address those issues. It may happen. We're lucky enough in Evanston not to have it happen here. I've seen it happen, though, in other spaces, and it's really important to have a system in place and not to be reactive to it, and to find a means to communicate in a really respectful way. But it's exciting work, and I think mostly it's incredibly rewarding, and I just keep learning more and more from the parents I work with every single day.
Great, thank you. I think that will conclude the Q&A section of this webinar, and I'll leave it to Kathy to wrap up the webinar.
All right, thank you. And I really want to thank the panelists and also everybody who participated. I was running the questions, and this is hands down the most questions that have ever been asked on a webinar that I've been on or organized. So I really appreciate all of your participation, and those of you who participated over and over again, a special thanks to you. I also really want to thank our webinar novice, Melissa. This was her first webinar. Melissa, you did a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you. I was nervous.
And I hope you'll come back. So just a couple of things. So we've heard from a lot of you that you're really eager for this sort of information, kind of the nuts and bolts about what other collaborations are doing. So starting with today's topic on parent engagement, the consortium is going to be publishing some occasional papers. It kind of goes topic by topic on some of the promising practices within local collaborations. We're really interested to know what your priorities are in terms of that information. So we've got one final poll to launch about some of the things that you're interested in. So Maya, if you launch this poll, this is you can answer more than one. So let us know what you're interested in terms of other topics, both for webinars and for who's doing what and where are they doing it. And while you're doing that, let me also say the other thing that we're really interested in is what are the tools that you are really interested in for your collaboration. So if there's something that you heard today, the PowerPoints will be available on our website in a couple of days. But if there's something specific that one of the panelists mentioned, let us know. Feel free to reach out to the panelists on your own. But we also want to be gathering up resources so that everybody has access to, hey, how did they do that? What did that survey look like? What does that org chart look like? So let us know what's useful to you. So close the poll, Maya. And it looks like, yeah, people have a lot of interest. That's great. I love all of that interest around policy and advocacy. That's fantastic. So thank you all so much for participating in today's webinar. We will send you a link to the webinar and also to the other resources once we get that up. And in the meantime, stay warm and enjoy this the holiday season with your loved ones. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great afternoon.